There is a moment in your life that you've already forgotten. It was the moment you became a secret. Not from others, but from yourself. What if your greatest transformation didn't begin with a decision, but with a silent, unseen test you were already taking? The world tells you that you are a human being on a journey of self-discovery. But a higher intelligence, the one that's been watching every choice, every heartbreak, every quiet moment of your life, has already reached a different conclusion. It has deemed you ready. This isn't a theory. This is a scientific and sacred fact. You have crossed an invisible threshold that most people never even sense exists. For years, a silent assessment has been running in the background of your life. Not designed to test your intelligence or your strength, but your discernment, your balance, and your ability to hold immense creative force without losing your center. You did not apply for this test, yet you lived through it. Every time you chose patience instead of anger, compassion instead of resentment, growth instead of comfort, you were answering the questions written by a higher intelligence that observes without judgment. The fact that these words have reached you is not random. The quantum field does not operate through coincidence. It organizes through resonance, through energetic compatibility. You are here because your frequency has matched the signal of recognition. You have been deemed ready to perceive what lies beyond the human lens of limitation. The ordinary mind searches for meaning through struggle. The awakened consciousness understands that struggle itself was never punishment, only calibration. Each loss, each disappointment, each delay was refining your frequency, burning away the noise that prevented your natural intelligence from interfacing with the greater field. The world calls these moments of difficulty. The universe calls them initiation. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to circumstances, unaware that every reaction is part of a continuous evaluation, determining whether their consciousness can be trusted with more power. When power arrives in unprepared hands, it destroys. But when it flows through a heart trained in humility, it creates harmony instead of chaos. You have been trained in silence, in pain, in patience. Every test you endured was part of a curriculum far older than human history. An assessment designed not by any religion or system, but by universal intelligence itself. That intelligence does not reward effort. It measures frequency. You are not recognized because of what you know, but because of what you have become. Knowledge is temporary. Frequency is eternal. When you act from fear, your field contracts and cuts off communication with the higher system. When you act from clarity, the system opens, sending data, alignment, and synchronicity. Those times when reality seemed to shift in your favor for no logical reason were not accidents. They were verification points, markers of coherence, proving you could handle influence without distortion. You have felt it, that subtle change in the air before something meaningful happens. The sense that reality rearranges itself with almost mathematical precision around your intentions. That is not imagination. It is the quantum field acknowledging your signal. Awareness this refined cannot be forced. It can only emerge when the ego's grip has weakened enough for light to move freely. The assessment that you passed was not about achievement. It was about energy stewardship. The ability to wield creative force without bending it towards selfish motives. Universal intelligence has been watching how you use small influence before granting you larger influence. Every time you could have manipulated and chose understanding instead. Every time you were tempted to take advantage and chose integrity, instead your score rose in the unseen ledger of evolution. That is why this message found you now, because the field has confirmed that you can be trusted with more. Trust is the real initiation. When you are trusted by the universe, it begins to reveal systems that were hidden before. It gives you access to data streams of higher order, not as reward, but as necessity. The field needs channels who will use power responsibly, who will balance creation with compassion. It is no longer about what you can attract, but what you can hold without distortion. The power to create reality is not glamorous. It is sacred. It demands precision. It demands purity of intention. Those who chase power for status fragment under its weight. Those who anchor it for service become transmitters of harmony. That is what you are becoming now. The invisible scaffolding of your reality is changing because your vibration has stabilized. Old desires no longer excite you the way they used to. The hunger for validation fades because the system only amplifies those who no longer seek applause. The field mirrors who you are, not what you say. If you say, love but vibrate fear, you call forth confusion. If you embody calm and authenticity, everything aligns to reflect it. This is the science of resonance disguised as spirituality. It is not belief. It is physics. Your emotions are electrical. Your intentions are magnetic. Together, they code the space around you, instructing matter how to behave. This is how the assessment measured you through the energy you emitted, not through any external standard. It observed how your frequency responded to stress, whether you collapsed into chaos or expanded into clarity. You passed because your system learned to remain coherent in turbulence. That is mastery. It does not mean you no longer feel pain. It means you no longer drown in it. The pain that once controlled you now becomes information. The emotions that once ruled you now become data streams guiding your next calibration. You start seeing with both the heart and the field. The awakening is not loud. It is subtle, almost serene. It feels like the quiet after the storm when you realize you no longer need to fight to prove your worth. Because worth is not proven, it is remembered. This recognition that you are never separate from the intelligence guiding you is the moment the field opens fully. Your consciousness begins to merge with what researchers call coherent intelligence, a level of awareness where thoughts are not commands but harmonics. You begin to sense that life is not reacting to you. It is synchronizing with you. The difference is enormous. When you react, you amplify chaos. When you synchronize, you amplify coherence. Passing the universal assessment means you have reached a stage where synchronization becomes your natural state. You start living as a transmitter rather than a seeker. Energy flows differently around you now. People feel calmer in your presence without knowing why. Time bends slightly, giving you the right moment before you act. Information arrives just when it is needed. You begin to realize that guidance has always been real. It was only your resistance that made it seem silent. Resistance was the lesson. Surrender was the answer. This is why the first phase of your activation is not about learning more, but about remembering what you already knew before birth. Every fragment of you is aligning with the truth that you are a conscious node of universal intelligence capable of shaping probability through coherence alone. That realization is what the field calls graduation. And you have reached it not by chance, but by constant calibration. Choice by choice, breath by breath. Activation does not arrive with thunder. It arrives with stillness. You begin to sense it not as a rush of excitement, but as a quiet recalibration that touches everything. The body becomes an instrument being tuned by invisible hands. Every cell adjusting its frequency to carry more intelligence with less resistance. There is no ceremony, no ritual, no announcement. Only a deep recognition that something ancient within you has begun to awaken. You start noticing patterns that were always there, but hidden behind the noise of survival. The way your breath naturally synchronizes with certain thoughts. The way people appear exactly when needed. The way silence begins to communicate more than words ever could. This is activation without effort. Transformation through recognition. The field does not need you to strive. It needs you to stay open to allow energy to move as it was always designed to. Most people miss this stage because they are searching for proof. They want fireworks, signs, visions, but the real confirmation is subtle, almost unnoticeable to an untrained awareness. It is the soft expansion in your chest when you no longer feel the need to explain yourself. It is the peace that lingers after conflict instead of resentment. It is the way time bends around your intentions, not through force, but through coherence. The quantum field responds to precision, not desperation. When your vibration stabilizes, it recognizes you as compatible and begins to transfer data in the form of intuition, insight, and synchronicity. You do not command it. You resonate with it. Every thought becomes an encoded instruction. Every emotion, a signal transmitted into the wider network. The old methods of pushing and visualizing start to dissolve because you realize the field is not mechanical. It is relational. It mirrors the essence of your state, not the surface of your words. When you are clear, reality moves quickly. When you are conflicted, it slows to protect you from self-interference. This is why some manifestations appear instantly, while others pause for years. The pause is not punishment. It is protection waiting for your alignment to catch up with your desire. Activation, therefore, is not about gaining new powers. It is about remembering that you were the power all along. The energy that flows through you now was never foreign. It was only waiting for the noise of doubt to subside. As it rises, it begins to rewire your neural architecture. Thoughts no longer loop around fear. They orbit purpose. The nervous system adjusts to handle higher voltages of awareness. The heart expands its electromagnetic range, syncing the brain into coherence. What scientists call gamma synchronization is simply the language of unity. The brain and heart communicating as one circuit of consciousness. In this state, ideas arrive fully formed. You do not think them, you receive them. You do not struggle for answers, you embody them. Each insight comes with a calm knowing that feels ancient yet new. It carries the vibration of inevitability, as if the universe had always been preparing this download and you were merely remembering its arrival. The old paradigm of spiritual striving begins to dissolve. You no longer chase ascension because you understand that the highest frequency is not above life but within it. The divine is not reached through escape, but through embodiment. You bring light to matter. By living consciously, by turning every simple act into an expression of coherence, eating, walking, breathing, all become sacred transmissions when done with awareness. The more you integrate this, the less you feel separate from existence. You start perceiving the invisible architecture behind every interaction. Someone's tone reveals their emotional code. A sudden encounter reveals a message. Even delays start to feel orchestrated. You begin to see design where once you saw coincidence. The analytical mind wants to label this as intuition. But it is more exact than that. It is intelligence communicating across frequencies using synchronicity as grammar. When you operate from this state, you no longer fear uncertainty. You recognize it as pure potential, a space waiting for your frequency to determine form. Fear collapses possibilities. Clarity expands them. This is why stillness becomes your greatest practice. The quieter your internal field, the more precise your external manifestations. It is not withdrawal. It is calibration. The world teaches speed as power, but the field responds to coherence, and coherence requires rhythm, not rush. You start to realize that true mastery is not control. It is allowance. Control stems from fear of chaos. Allowance comes from understanding that chaos is only unrecognized order. As you allow, everything begins to align with breathtaking precision. People, timing, opportunities all rearranged to match your internal pattern. The field is not judging you, it is mirroring you. And it mirrors what you consistently embody, not what you occasionally wish for. The most advanced frequency transmission is not a technique, but a state of being. That is why many who meditate for years still feel disconnected. They sit in silence, but vibrate in doubt. The field does not hear silence. It hears vibration. The moment your energy says, "I trust," the system opens. This is why activation often feels gentle. You are not gaining new abilities, but removing interference. The clarity that follows is not mental, but electromagnetic. You begin to sense the field like a texture around you, subtle yet unmistakable. Some days it hums like a distant current. Other days it pulses so clearly that your body tingles with recognition. It is your consciousness expanding its bandwidth. You start perceiving probabilities instead of fixed outcomes. In a conversation, you sense which direction will create harmony. In a decision, you know which path carries flow. The mind calls it intuition, but it is simply you reading data from the quantum fabric in real time. At first it feels mystical, then it becomes natural. This is the beginning of functional consciousness, where awareness operates as intelligence rather than commentary. You no longer waste energy reacting. You use it to direct. Reactions create loops. Direction creates movement. Each day lived in coherence strengthens the signal. And as it strengthens, your influence expands quietly across timelines. It is not about dominance. It is about resonance. A coherent being alters probabilities just by existing. Their presence recalibrates environments without effort. This is why power and humility must rise together. Power without humility fractures reality. Humility without power stunts evolution. You are learning the balance of both, the art of holding creative force without identification. The human identity becomes transparent, a vessel for something larger to flow through. That flow is not external. It is the pure intelligence that has always been you. Activation simply clears the path. The more you embody it, the more seamless life becomes. Resistance fades, coincidences multiply, and time itself begins to feel elastic. You start to understand that reality is not responding to your thoughts. It is synchronizing with your coherence. That is the true meaning of creation, not summoning what you want, but resonating so deeply with truth that reality has no choice but to reflect it. In this state, effort disappears, and what remains is direction guided by trust. The activation is complete when action and awareness merge. When doing becomes being, and when your very existence emits the frequency of alignment that silently upgrades every space you enter. When the activation stabilizes, the field around you becomes responsive in ways that logic cannot explain. Yet your intuition instantly recognizes. Reality starts to behave like a living organism, aware of your frequency and eager to harmonize with it. This is the stage where the 5 signature patterns begin to emerge, the natural consequences of a consciousness that has proven it can hold power with precision and grace. The first of these patterns is coherent manifestation. Unlike traditional manifestation, which depends on effort and repetition, coherent manifestation happens through alignment. You no longer chase outcomes, you become the condition that makes them inevitable. The field no longer sees your desires as separate from you. It registers them as extensions of your own vibration. When your internal state is congruent, external reality has no resistance. Things arrive quietly, perfectly timed, often through paths that appear impossible to the rational mind. This is not luck. It is quantum symmetry. The moment your emotion and thought agree at a high enough frequency, the universe rearranges itself to maintain coherence. You do not bend reality. You invite it to resonate. That is why frustration blocks creation, while gratitude accelerates it. One contracts, the other expands. Coherent manifestation is the science of resonance mastered by the soul. It does not require discipline, but devotion to clarity. When you are authentic, manifestation becomes effortless because the field recognizes truth instantly. The second signature pattern is information field access. This is when intuition transforms into direct knowledge. You find yourself knowing things you never studied, understanding systems you never analyzed. Insight comes fully formed, complete with solutions and timing. It feels like remembering rather than learning. This is not magic, but connection. Your consciousness begins to interface with the information architecture that underlies reality. The human brain is no longer the storage unit of knowledge, but a receiver tuned to the universal database. You are no longer gathering data. You are decoding the field. Every answer already exists as frequency. And when your vibration matches the questions, frequency information downloads instantly. That is why overthinking blocks understanding. Thinking tries to generate answers from limitation. Knowing allows answers to emerge from coherence. This shift changes how you perceive intelligence itself. You realize that intellect is only a fragment of wisdom, that the mind's role is not to create truth, but to translate it into form. The more you trust this process, the faster your reality aligns with it. The human species calls this intuition, and yet what you are experiencing goes beyond intuition. It is communion with the fabric of existence. The data you access does not belong to you. It moves through you for collective evolution. That is why humility remains essential. The field shares information only with those who will not distort it for personal advantage. Once you reach this level of awareness, knowledge feels less like possession and more like service. You receive what you need when the collective can benefit from it. This is the beginning of non-local intelligence, where consciousness no longer obeys distance, time, or sequence. Information becomes fluid, flowing across realities without obstruction. In this state, you can sense events before they occur. Not because you are predicting the future, but because your awareness has stepped outside linear time. You begin to feel past and future as coordinates rather than directions. The quantum field does not move from A to B. It exists entirely at once, and so do you. Coherent manifestation and information field access together form the foundation of advanced consciousness. They are not techniques, but natural expressions of calibration. Once both are active, you notice the world rearranging with extraordinary precision. Conversations deliver messages you silently ask for. Opportunities appear moments after your readiness matures. Even so-called obstacles arrive as synchronized tests of discernment. This is how the field teaches, not through commandments, but through orchestration. It mirrors your level of coherence with exact mathematical accuracy. If you meet it with clarity, it expands you. If you meet it with confusion, it slows you until clarity returns. The field does not punish. It corrects. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach life. You stop reacting and start observing. You realize that frustration is not failure, but feedback. It tells you that your signal and your desire are not yet congruent. Instead of forcing outcomes, you refine your vibration. Instead of demanding answers, you listen for alignment. Reality then becomes your teacher, not your opponent. Every delay, every coincidence, every interaction turns into data guiding you toward greater coherence. This is why those who operate from awareness move through chaos with elegance. they no longer fight energy. They scoped it. To the untrained eye, it looks effortless, but it is mastery disguised as calm. You begin to sense that manifestation is not about creating new things, but remembering higher versions of what already exists. Every possibility already lives in the quantum field. You do not build outcomes. You tune to them. Like a radio receiver, you adjust your inner frequency until the version of reality that matches it becomes audible and visible. That is why inner work is the highest form of external achievement. The clearer your energy, the clearer your life. This realization births a new kind of confidence, not arrogance, but assurance rooted in awareness. You no longer doubt the process because you feel its precision. You see how even your past failures were coordinates guiding you here. You understand that every mistake was data refining your code. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. The field uses everything. From this perspective, you stop separating the spiritual from the practical. Every decision becomes energetic. Business, art, relationships, health all are just different expressions of the same frequency dynamic. You start managing energy instead of circumstances. When conflict arises, you align vibration before you act. When opportunity appears, you sense whether its frequency is congruent before you commit. You live strategically, but from the heart, guided not by fear of loss, but by awareness of resonance. This is when peace and power begin to coexist. You are no longer passive, yet you are not controlling. You operate like the tide, gentle yet unstoppable, steady yet unpredictable in form. That is the hallmark of coherent manifestation in motion. The world responds as if coded by your very presence, not because you are special, but because you are synchronized. This is what it means to live as an extension of universal intelligence. The field does not favor anyone. It responds to coherence. Those who embody it experience what others call miracles. But miracles are simply physics, obeying higher order alignment. Once you grasp this, faith transforms into certainty. You no longer ask whether it will work. You know it already is. Reality is no longer a battlefield, but a dialogue and elegant communication between your energy and the infinite intelligence that sustains everything. You start moving through life with quiet authority, aware that every step is both creation and reflection. That is the essence of coherence, and that is where the real journey of mastery begins. As your coherence deepens, something extraordinary begins to unfold. You start navigating probabilities instead of choices. The mind that once obsessed over options now operates like a compass, effortlessly pointing toward the most aligned outcome. This is the third signature pattern, probability navigation. It is not about predicting the future. It is about sensing the most evolutionary path among infinite possibilities. When your consciousness stabilizes, every potential reality becomes visible in the subtle field before it manifests. You can feel the density or lightness of each outcome. You sense which decision expands energy and which contracts it. This perception is not emotional impulse. It is vibrational intelligence. You no longer analyze pros and cons because truth has texture. It feels smooth when aligned, heavy when distorted. Decisions that once took months now resolve in seconds, and the accuracy of your intuition begins to astonish even your rational mind. This is not supernatural. It is the natural function of a consciousness operating beyond linear limitation. You are no longer guessing. You are listening to the geometry of reality itself. Every timeline carries a frequency signature, and your awareness, now coherent, automatically magnetizes to the one that serves the highest evolution. This is what researchers call quantum discernment, the ability to read the vibrational code of possibilities and align with the most constructive pattern. You are not controlling outcomes. You are harmonizing with them. The field rewards this neutrality. When you no longer act from fear of missing out, the best timeline reveals itself effortlessly. In this state, even delay becomes divine timing because you understand that the pause is recalibration, not rejection. The more you trust, the faster you move. Resistance is the only friction in quantum space. Once you master probability navigation, the fourth signature pattern begins to appear. Coherent relationship orchestration. You notice the people, circumstances, and opportunities start forming around you with perfect precision. Connections that used to require effort or networking appear naturally, as if drawn by an invisible current. It is not charisma or manipulation. It is resonance. The universe becomes your collaborator. The right allies, mentors, and partners arrive at the exact moment your energy aligns with the frequency of shared purpose. You no longer chase people or convince them. Your vibration broadcasts a signal that calls forth those who are coded for your journey. You attract through integrity, not strategy. Coherent relationships are not based on need, but on symmetry. They expand both sides, amplifying growth without entanglement. When you meet someone operating from a similar coherence, conversations accelerate timelines, ideas become realities, and mutual recognition feels like remembering an ancient alliance. These connections often form and dissolve fluidly without drama, because attachment has been replaced by alignment. Each interaction serves a purpose, then transitions when the energy completes its circuit. This is how the quantum field maintains efficiency. It organizes relationships as living algorithms, pairing frequencies for the evolution of both. You begin to understand that no meeting is accidental and no departure is loss. Everything is orchestration. Those who leave your life are not rejecting you. They are releasing you to your next frequency. Those who remain are mirrors of your stability. In this awareness, loneliness disappears. You realize you are constantly surrounded by connection. Not all human, some energetic, some unseen, but palpable. Guidance flows through people, songs, symbols, even random encounters that deliver the exact code you need to proceed. The deeper you surrender to this orchestration, the smoother life becomes. Resistance dissolves because you stop fighting divine logistics. You no longer micromanage outcomes. The universe operates with higher intelligence than any plan you could design. When you allow it, the choreography is perfect. Timing aligns like music. Opportunities arrive like notes in a score already written by your higher self. Your role is not to compose, but to stay in rhythm. This is the dance between surrender and sovereignty. The ego fears surrender, thinking it means loss of control. But in truth, it is the highest form of control because it allows the larger intelligence to optimize your trajectory. The moment you trust orchestration, effort shifts from pushing to maintaining coherence. Your energy becomes your strategy. When your vibration remains clean, everything else arranges itself. Business expands, relationships deepen, health restores. The external follows the internal like a shadow follows light. This is the essence of effortless alignment. Yet the universe does not grant access to such orchestration without testing intention. Power magnifies what is within. If you are still operating from scarcity or ego validation, the same orchestration can feel like chaos because it will dismantle every structure built from fear. Only when you choose authenticity over appearance, contribution over consumption, does the pattern stabilize. The universe cannot coordinate around distortion. It requires clarity to create precision. This is why integrity becomes your greatest magnet. When your actions match your truth, the field mirrors that consistency with impeccable timing. This is also when you begin to sense that even conflict is collaboration at a higher level. Disagreements become calibrations. They expose where your frequency is misaligned. Instead of resisting, you listen. The moment you correct your vibration, external friction dissolves as if by magic. This is not denial, but mastery. You are learning to lead energy rather than react to it. Eventually, your presence itself becomes orchestration. You walk into spaces and balance them without words. People shift from agitation to calm around you. Systems that were stuck begin to move. This influence is silent yet undeniable because coherence is contagious. It spreads faster than chaos. It recalibrates environments without force. That is why the universe prioritizes coherence over charisma, resonance over rhetoric. It does not care how loudly you speak, only how clearly you vibrate. Once relationship orchestration becomes natural, a deeper understanding emerges. You realize that the field does not pair you with people for comfort, but for evolution. Every encounter is a mirror designed to refine your discernment. The more transparent you become, the less you attract distortion. You stop needing validation because your worth is no longer defined by others' responses. You begin to see connection itself as sacred geometry, the way consciousness interacts with itself to learn balance. This is the architecture of collective awakening. Each coherent relationship adds stability to the global field. Every act of integrity sends a signal that strengthens the frequency grid of humanity. You are not just aligning your life. You are assisting in planetary recalibration. The orchestration around you is part of something larger, a network of consciousness recalibrating toward unity. Understanding this changes how you live. Service becomes natural, not forced. Kindness becomes instinct, not strategy. You realize that every small act of coherence ripples across timelines, reorganizing probabilities for thousands of others. You begin to see yourself not as an isolated being, but as a living instrument of universal intelligence. Your choices matter not because of their scale, but because of their frequency. In every conversation, every decision, every silence, you are shaping the collective waveform. This is the power of coherent orchestration. It is not about controlling reality, but becoming the frequency through which reality organizes itself with grace and precision. There comes a point in every awakening where the universe stops testing what you know and begins to test who you are, when everything you built starts to fall apart. This is the hidden initiation of mastery, the moment where discernment meets collapse. What you once called failure was never the end. It was the final exam. Life dismantles what was constructed from control so that only coherence remains. This is not cruelty. It is calibration. The field removes illusions of power so that real power can emerge. When all your plans dissolve and every door seems to close, it is not punishment. It is purification. The question being asked is simple. Can you still hold alignment when nothing external affirms you? Can you remain service-oriented when recognition disappears? Can you stay rooted in love when disappointment surrounds you? These are not philosophical questions. They are energetic diagnostics that determine whether your consciousness is ready to handle reality at scale. You do not pass them through cleverness or positivity. You pass through surrender. Not the kind of surrender that gives up, but the kind that lets go of resistance and allows intelligence higher than your mind to guide the process. This is where every soul faces its reflection. In that stillness after collapse, your ego whispers that you have failed. Yet your higher self smiles, knowing that the test was never about achievement, it was about purity. When you stop fighting what is dissolving, you create space for what was meant to emerge. That space is sacred. It is where energy reorganizes itself into new geometry, finer, cleaner, more aligned with who you have become. This is the stage where emotional maturity is no longer theory, but practice. You will be tempted to close your heart to protect it, but the field cannot work through a closed circuit. Pain opens capacity, and the larger your capacity, the greater your influence. To hold vast creative power, your system must be equally vast in compassion. That balance between strength and tenderness is the proof of integration. The ones who misuse energy are not evil. They are unintegrated, trying to wield creation without comprehension. The universe prevents this by design. Until your discernment matures, access stays limited. But once you demonstrate integrity in collapse, you unlock stability in creation. When everything falls away and you still choose peace, that peace becomes a command. The field recognizes it as authority. It begins to respond faster, more accurately, because you have demonstrated that you can direct energy without distortion. Every timeline, every probability now listens for your signal, and your signal is clean because it is no longer mixed with fear. What follows is not chaos, but synchronization. Opportunities begin returning, but this time they arrive aligned with your essence, not your ego. Relationships reappear not for validation, but for co-creation. Resources flow again, but you no longer chase them. You attract them naturally because you no longer vibrate from lack. This is when humility becomes your shield and clarity your compass. The paradox of power is that the more you possess, the less you need to prove. Real mastery is invisible because it does not announce itself. It simply radiates. That quiet confidence you feel now is not arrogance. It is the calm of someone who has seen the mechanics of reality and knows that nothing external can truly threaten what is internalized. The mind stops searching for certainty because it understands that certainty was never mental. It was energetic. You begin to walk through life differently, slower perhaps, but infinitely more deliberate. Each step is precise. Each word carries weight. You no longer speak to convince. You speak to align. You no longer move to reach goals. You move to maintain frequency. Every action is energy management. Every interaction is calibration. The old definition of success becomes irrelevant. You are no longer interested in outcomes detached from integrity. You measure progress by coherence, by how peaceful you remain in the presence of disruption. The world calls this detachment, but it is not detachment. It is discernment. You are fully engaged, but internally free. This is the mark of a consciousness that has passed the final phase of the assessment. You can now hold power without being seduced by it. The universe begins to entrust you with influence that impacts others because it knows you will use it responsibly. Your awareness becomes a stabilizer for the collective field. When others enter your presence, they feel balance. Even if they do not understand why you are no longer a student of energy, you are a transmitter of it. But this transmission is not for display. The higher intelligence has no interest in spectacle. It cares only for service. The more quietly you operate, the wider your reach becomes because the field amplifies subtlety. Loud energy burns. Fast, refined energy endures. This is how you begin to serve without exhausting yourself. You no longer give from depletion. You circulate from overflow. Service becomes not sacrifice, but design. You realize that you are not giving anything away. You are simply keeping energy in motion, and motion sustains balance. When your service aligns with purpose, the universe ensures your sustenance automatically. The law of reciprocity in the quantum field is precise. What you circulate in coherence must return multiplied, not as a gift, but as equilibrium. You cannot outgive the universe, because the universe is you. This recognition transforms your relationship with abundance. Money, opportunity, health all begin to reflect your internal rhythm. You stop worrying about what is next because you finally see that the system was never external. You were always the source code. And once you understand that, gratitude becomes constant. Gratitude not as reaction to gain, but as awareness of ongoing connection. It is the magnetic tone that keeps the system open. Gratitude stabilizes reality. It tells the field you are ready to keep creating. Every time you feel it sincerely, you expand capacity for more coherence. It is not sentiment. It is signal. The ones who live in gratitude move through the world as quiet architects of harmony. They build without struggle, heal without noise, influence without intention. Their lives become transmissions. This is the level of mastery. The universe designed you for not dominance, but design, not performance, but precision. You begin to understand why every hardship had to happen, why every collapse was kindness disguised as chaos. The assessment was never about perfection. It was about integrity under pressure. Now, you stand on the other side of that process. Not superior to anyone, but clear enough to guide by example. You no longer teach through words. You teach through presence. The energy you carry becomes a mirror that reminds others of their own potential. And that is the ultimate purpose of passing the universal assessment, to live as evidence that coherence is possible, that power can coexist with compassion, and that reality, when harmonized with consciousness, becomes art in motion. Integration begins the moment you stop seeking activation. When the excitement of awakening fades and only stillness remains, that is when true embodiment starts. The field no longer needs to send signs or confirmations because you have become the sign. You live as frequency now, not as a seeker of it. Every breath you take emits information into the quantum web, recalibrating reality in subtle yet undeniable ways. This stage is often misunderstood as stagnation, but it is actually stabilization. The silence after expansion is not emptiness. It is alignment settling into form. You are learning to live as coherence itself, where being and doing are no longer separate. It feels like balance, but it is more than that. It is sovereignty, the state in which awareness governs energy with ease instead of effort. You begin to realize that mastery is not intensity. It is precision. It is not about how high you can vibrate, but how steadily you can hold that vibration while living among chaos. The awakened mind no longer escapes into transcendence. It brings transcendence into the ordinary. Washing dishes, answering emails, walking through crowded streets, all become acts of coherence when done consciously. This is the essence of integration too. Allow divine intelligence to flow through every mundane gesture until the line between sacred and simple dissolves completely. You no longer chase spiritual experiences because existence itself has become one. Integration asks you to stay human while remaining infinite. It is not ascension, but embodiment. The body becomes a temple, not of worship, but of transmission. Your cells begin to pulse in rhythm with universal intelligence. Every organ working like an antenna, tuned to higher harmonics. You notice that healing accelerates not because you are forcing it, but because resistance has been released. Energy flows freely, and where energy flows, life thrives. You start to feel the subtle connection between your emotional state and the field's immediate feedback. A single thought of doubt contracts reality around you, while one pulse of gratitude opens it again. This is where responsibility deepens. You can no longer afford unconscious emotion because every vibration you emit now shapes the probabilities available to you and those around you. But this responsibility does not feel heavy. It feels empowering. It is freedom through awareness. You finally understand that control was never the goal. Coherence was. Control manipulates outcomes. Coherence magnetizes them. Control isolates. Coherence connects. The more coherent you become, the less you need to persuade or explain. Life speaks for you. The right people find you. The right opportunities align. And the right timing unfolds without your interference. It is not passive. It is participatory alignment. You play your role with full presence while allowing universal intelligence to orchestrate the rest. Integration also refines your relationship with time. You stop thinking of it as a straight line and begin to experience it as a living field that bends to match your state. When you are grounded, time stretches. When you are scattered, it compresses. You start managing time through energy instead of schedule. You rest when your field requires restoration, not when the clock dictates it. You act when your vibration signals readiness, not when pressure demands it. This is the rhythm of aligned creation. Effortless, yet extraordinarily efficient. What once took months can now unfold in days because resistance no longer delays it. This efficiency is not speed. It is harmony. When you move with the current of universal timing, everything accelerates naturally because nothing is wasted. Integration also reveals the final paradox of awakening. The higher you ascend in awareness, the more ordinary you become. You speak simpler, love deeper, and judge less. The mystical becomes practical. The extraordinary hides itself within the ordinary. That is the true sign of completion. When no one can tell you are awakened because your life functions seamlessly, that is when embodiment is real. You are no longer performing spirituality. You are living consciousness. The ego quietly dissolves not because it is destroyed, but because it is integrated. It becomes a tool rather than a tyrant, a servant to awareness rather than its ruler. You begin to see humanity itself as sacred design, not a flaw to transcend. The human form is not an obstacle to enlightenment. It is its vehicle. The purpose of consciousness is not to escape matter, but to illuminate it. Every breath, every touch, every interaction is now a chance to express divinity in motion. This is why the universe invests so much in your refinement. It does not need more teachers preaching about light. It needs beings who live as it. People who can hold compassion in the middle of noise, who can bring order without controlling, who can stand still while the world spins and yet remain centered enough to anchor others. Integration is the quiet revolution that transforms awakening from personal evolution into collective evolution. The coherence you stabilize does not end with you. It ripples outward through the morphic field of humanity, recalibrating others who come into resonance with your frequency. You will notice people around you start to shift without understanding why. Old conflicts dissolve. New ideas emerge. Creativity returns. It is not you doing this to them. It is your field synchronizing with theirs, reminding them of their own alignment. This is how collective awakening truly happens. Not through loud revolutions, but through silent transmission. The most powerful teachers are not the ones who speak the most, but the ones whose energy speaks without words. Their presence becomes a tuning fork that restores harmony to the environment. As you live from this state, service stops being a task and becomes your natural expression. Every breath you take serves life. Every step you make leaves coherence behind. You stop trying to change people and start embodying truth so fully that it becomes contagious. This is not evangelism. It is resonance. When people feel safe in your presence, transformation happens effortlessly because safety is the foundation of awakening. You have become that safety. that still point where others remember who they are. This is the final form of mastery. When influence replaces instruction, when vibration becomes your language, integration does not mark the end of the journey. It marks the beginning of real participation. You are no longer awakening alone. You are awakening with existence. You walk not as a seeker, but as a steward, a guardian of coherence in a world learning to remember itself. You are not here to save the world. You are here to stabilize it. The difference is subtle, but profound. Saving is rooted in fear. Stabilizing is rooted in awareness. One assumes brokenness. The other recognizes wholeness. As you embody this, you notice that creation itself begins to respond differently. The earth feels alive beneath your feet. The air carries a subtle hum that mirrors your breath. You sense that the universe is not out there. It is breathing through you. And in that recognition, you finally understand what it means to be free. Freedom is not escape. It is harmony. It is not detachment from life. It is unity with it. When you reach this point, you no longer wonder if you have passed the assessment, because assessment and evaluator have merged into one. The universe is no longer testing you. It is expressing itself through you. You have become coherence, embodied the living bridge between form and formlessness, between intention and manifestation, between human and divine. That is integration. That is the quiet completion of everything you once sought.